So without further ado, let me introduce Dennison Keller.
Thank you. Thank you. This is my practice, the law practice of Dennison Keller, and this is our motto: who respects the elderly is as if he respects the Lord. Now, it took me a long time to go back to school and get this law degree, but they've said I've got to be off the stage promptly. They're going to give me the hook at 9:25. So I'm going to tell you everything I know about elder law in like 22 minutes. All right, so we're going to go through a lot of information very, very quickly, okay? Now, most people come to an elder law attorney, and it's finances that kind of drive them in the door. Oh, I've got a diagnosis of Parkinson's. I'm worried I'm going to end up in the nursing home. A nursing home is going to cost me $10,000 to $12,000 a month. What do I do? Which is a legitimate and good concern. But we're also short-sighted if we don't look at the care issues at the same time we look at the legal issues. Because long after your legal issues are buttoned up, long after you might apply for Medicaid, you're going to be gnawing with care issues basically until the day you pass from this earth. And that's how this whole life care planning model was born. So what is life care planning? Life care planning is a more holistic approach to elder law, where we are addressing the legal issues, and also a care team is helping the families navigate the care maze, because it is absolutely a maze out there. Most people tend to plan for the two bridges of life, or I guess I should say the two ends of the bridge of life, all right? Quick question: how many in this room have some sort of nest egg? An IRA, a 401k, something like that. Savings, of course, almost everybody, right? But then on the other side of the span, how many in this room have some sort of estate planning? I've got a will, I've got a trust, I've got a payable on death account, I've got a beneficiary form. Almost everybody has that. The problem is almost nobody prepares for the middle of the span, and that is where all the sharks lie. Cheesy elder law attorneys included, okay? I mean, you can build up a heck of a nest egg on the left side of the bridge and blow through it all before you ever get to the end of the bridge. And I'm not just talking about a financial nest egg. I'm talking about an emotional nest egg, and a spiritual nest egg as well. Because a lot of you are in this room to learn and at this conference because you know firsthand it is absolutely exhausting when you get a chronic care diagnosis, to deal with the disease yourself or also to care with somebody who has that disease. And that's why you're here to learn more. The problem is attorneys aren't very well equipped to handle these care issues, right? I mean, when do you go to an attorney with a care issue? Unfortunately, when something goes terribly wrong and now you want to sue somebody. Well, that's not a very efficient way to do that, is it? So on a life care plan model, we have a team of experts to shore up, frankly, my ignorance. All right? So these are some of the members of my staff. The top there is Charlotte Peoples. She's our Medicare coordinator. All right? Before she came to work for us, she was the Senior Health Insurance Program Coordinator for Hamilton County. So she knows pretty much everything there is to know about Medicare. Below her is Lisa Titus. Lisa opened and was Executive Director of 2 assisted living facilities with memory care units, and also was a former Education Director of the Alzheimer's Association. Below her is Debbie Groh, registered nurse. She's an elder care coordinator, 30-plus years of experience in a nursing home. And to her left is Katie Merriman, our Medicaid coordinator. Katie used to work at the Department of Job and Family Services doing nursing home cases for Medicaid applications. And then you've got the 2 boring suits on the other side of the screen, right? Does anybody want to hazard who's the weak link in this operation? I know, it's early, you're afraid to say it. I'll say it for you, me, right? The guy whose name is on the door, because trust me, as the rubber's hitting the road, the people on the left side of the screen there are the people that you need, as opposed to the right side. Now, you make our job so much easier. And this is really the one takeaway, because you'll forget a lot of this, okay? But this is the one takeaway I want you to have at the end of this session. You've got to have 2 must-have documents: financial power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. All right? I think most of you know what a healthcare power of attorney is. You're designating somebody to make healthcare decisions for you when you can no longer make them for yourself. okay? It's not the same as a guardianship. You don't want to have to go through a guardianship. A guardianship is a court process where somebody's named as your guardian and they take all your rights away. You don't want to have to go through a guardianship, and that's why the documents I listed up there, the financial power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, are so important. You have those in place, 99.9% of the time you're not going to have to go through a guardianship. Now, I know a lot of you are like, oh, I've got that taken care of. No, you don't. No, you don't. Particularly on the financial power of attorney. The first thing we do when somebody comes into a consultation with our office is we ask, do you have a financial power of attorney? Let me see it. And I go through it, and I'm here to tell you that 99% of the time, the power of attorney documents that are brought into our office are not good enough to get you through the elder care continuum, particularly when you have a chronic care diagnosis. Now, why is that? Well, these are standard powers that are in a power of attorney. Banking, the authority to sell real estate, buy and sell stocks, borrow money. If you have a power of attorney that you had prepared 10 years ago by an estate planning attorney, those are going to have those. Those are fine. It's the other powers that you need in there that are typically not in the standard power of attorney, like a gifting power. I give my daughter, who's my power of attorney agent, the authority to make gifts of my assets to herself and to my other children. Now that's dangerous, is it not? You bet it is. So you wouldn't want to have that in there unless you really trust your daughter. But boy, it becomes a huge tool to have, particularly in a Medicaid setting down the road. The power to establish and fund a special needs trust or any kind of trust. This trips people up because most power of attorneys have a trust power in there, which gives you the authority to fund trusts. That's not the same as the authority to create a trust. The power to self-deal. Maybe my father has Parkinson's, and I want to buy our family house because it has sentimental value to me. I love growing up there. Well, think that through. If he's lost the ability to sign documents, and I want to buy it, and I'm his power of attorney agent, I've got to go to that closing and sign those documents as the buyer and the seller. Well, that makes title companies go bonkers. And you can't do it unless you specifically have the power to self-deal. I can buy this house for fair market value and give it to myself. Digital assets, to tap into your Facebook accounts and your online music accounts and your bank accounts, you want to have that in there, and you want to have an annuity power. The authority, you want to give your agent the authority to buy and annuitize assets. Most power of attorney documents do not have those in there unless they were prepared by an elder law attorney. So if you do nothing else at the end of this conference, go home, dust up your power of attorney document, look through it, and if you have questions, go see an elder law attorney, all right? Me, somebody else, I don't care. Just get this taken care of, all right? Now, everybody in this room, unless they have, I want to say, $1.2 million or more, needs to keep their eye on the Medicaid ball. Now, why is that? Now, we're not talking about Medicaid that you hear in the news a lot of times in terms of expanded Medicaid, offshoots of Obamacare. We're talking Medicaid for the aged. And that will help you potentially pay for nursing home care down the road if you need it. And the reason I say that you have to keep your eye on the Medicaid ball is that there are financial decisions and transactions that you will make that seem like they make perfect logical sense in the real world, and they do, that will blow up on you in 5 years in a Medicaid application. There are 3 offshoots of Medicaid for the aged. One is Passport, which is Medicaid for the home. There's also what's called the Assisted Living Waiver, which is Medicaid for assisted living, very difficult to get. The third is Nursing Home Medicaid, which most people think of as Medicaid for the aged, and that is Medicaid to help you pay for a nursing home. These are the asset requirements to qualify for Medicaid. In Ohio and Kentucky, you have to get your assets down as a single person to $2,000. That's not income, that's assets. If you have a house, you got to sell it, and you can have a car for medical transport. That's pretty much it, unless you live on the other side of the border, our friends to the south in Kentucky. Look down there at the bottom. They get to keep their IRAs and 401ks. So you, in theory, could be a millionaire living in Covington, and all your assets are tied up, your $1 million is tied up in your IRA, and you can qualify for Medicaid. So do we sometimes recommend for people to hop the border? You bet we do. All right, it's the benefit of living in a tri-state area. But you don't have the same option in Ohio. Now, for a couple, there's a little bit more leeway. All right, for a couple, if I have a sick spouse who's going to apply for Medicaid in the nursing home, and let's say it's the husband, the wife can keep up to just shy of $124,000 plus a house plus a car. She has more berthing space. And that makes sense if you think about it, because she's still out in the community. She still lives in the home. She still has bills to pay. She's still driving around. So that's why they give more leeway to couples. Now, also notice in Kentucky as well, you also get to keep your IRAs and 401ks. Okay? Is it okay if we just kind of keep the slides up as opposed to going back to me? Thank you. All right. Not that I don't love seeing myself on camera. I spent a career doing that, okay? But, okay, so what can we do if we have too many resources? All right? One of the things we can do is we can buy burial spaces and prepaid irrevocable funeral contracts. Everybody pretty much needs them and or wants them. You can buy that down ahead of time as you're applying for a Medicaid application. You can fix up your house, even if you have to sell it. Maybe you've got shag carpet that's been there since 1970. Maybe you don't have central air. You can make expenditures on the house in preparation for it to sell. Or if you think about for a couple, again, that husband and wife, maybe the husband was too cheap to buy the wife the new kitchen all those years. Now's her time for her Viking stove, complete with a copper hood, all right? A spouse can buy a new car, unlimited value, and also the prepaid irrevocable funeral contracts. Now, the question always comes up, can I gift my money away? I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's. I know the nursing home is going to cost me $12,000 a month. Can I go ahead and give my money away now so the facility doesn't get everything that I own? And the answer is you've got to be careful in gifting, all right? So I'm going to come down here. Let me have a volunteer. Let me have a volunteer. Okay, you. What's your name? Elise. Elise? Elise, for your troubles, I'm going to give you $100,000. So you all wish you had volunteered, right? Now, you don't get to keep it long. The bad news is you have to go to a nursing home, all right? So you're going to do something with that money. You decide, I'm going to give it away. Find somebody to give it to. Somebody. Did you see, she held her hand out right away. What's your name? Your name's Merlee. Okay, Elise just gave Merlee $100,000. And we're here in 2018, are we not? Okay? The problem with this transaction really is no problem here in 2018. What are you going to do with the money? Yeah. You're going to give it to your husband. What are you going to do with it? He's going to use it to buy a new house. All right. Good for you. Okay. Where are you going to buy? Indiana. All right. Buying a house in Indiana. So the problem with this is, in Medicaid, there is a 5-year look back. All right? And that means when you apply for Medicaid, they look at your financial statements, and they're looking back 5 years. And what are they looking for? They're looking for gifts just like this. Okay? And so what do they do if they find that gift? Well, they impose a penalty period. And for every basically $6,600 that Elise has given away, translates into 1 month of a Medicaid penalty, where she's not eligible for Medicaid. She's got to private pay her way. So she just gave away $100,000 to her good friend Merlee. Do the math, 6,600 goes into 100,000 about 15 times. That translates into 15 months that she's not eligible for Medicaid. And guess what? We might be to 2022 and she's bone dry at that point, and now she applies for Medicaid. She made the gift when she was flush with cash, but she took her other life savings and spent it on her care. Then she applies for Medicaid in 2022. She's on her own for the next 15 months. And so that's why you've got to be careful with gifting. There are ways you can do it, but you've got to do it in this Medicaid world context. Another thing you want to be aware of is don't commingle assets. Don't do things that look like gifts. If we have Parkinson's, more often than not, we have a child who's helping to take care of us and running errands, right? And what does that child do? She puts all those expenses on her credit card. And what does the parent do? She reimburses the child by writing her checks. What does that look like to a caseworker 4 years down the road? Because all they see is $700 for the daughter, $1,000 for the daughter, $1,500 for the daughter. That looks like a gift. And it becomes really difficult to prove 4 years down the road that the LaRosas and the Krogers and the CVS charges are for your mother and not for you. Don't commingle assets. Don't pay your child to take care of you. You can do it, but you got to do it pursuant to a contract. If you commit it to writing, you can actually pay your child to take care of you, but you've got to commit it to writing. There are big exemptions to the gifting penalties. If I am living with my parent, and I can prove that I lived in her house for 2 years, and I kept her out of the nursing home for 2 years, and a doctor certifies that fact, the parent can give the house to the child, no gifting penalties. Big exemption. What do I need to make that transaction work, though? Power of attorney with gifting authority and the power to self-deal. That's why those clauses are so important. Another exemption to the gifting penalties. If I've got a disabled child, meaning a child who's on disability or SSI, I can gift everything, house, car, cash, doesn't matter, not be hooked for a penalty. But again, I need that power of attorney with gifting authority and self-dealing authority to make that happen. Again, that's why those documents are so important. Is there anything else I can do? You bet. I can set up what is called a pooled Medicaid payback trust. So what is a pooled Medicaid payback trust? Now, I don't have time to go in detail about what a trust is and how it operates, but think of it as like a box, all right? Now, instead of gifting Merle the money, who's just going to give it to her husband for the house in Indiana, what if Elsie instead puts it in this box and shuts the door? A pooled Medicaid payback trust is a special kind of trust where if you put it in here, the government doesn't count it against you as a resource. I can put $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. Now, before you get too excited, you're talking to an attorney. There's always a loophole, right? It's not quite as good as it sounds. Because after she passes away, what happens? It pays the state back to the extent that it pays for her care. So the obvious question is what? Why do it? Well, here's why you do it. When it pays the state back, it does so at the state rate, not the Medicaid rate. Let's take that. It does so at the state rate, not the private pay rate, he tried to say. So if you're paying $8,000, $10,000 a month, state of Ohio isn't paying that in the nursing home. They're paying about $6,000 or $7,000. So you're saving $2,000 or $3,000 a month in that process, bettering the chances you can leave something to your heirs. But the real reason why you do it is she can draw on it while she's in the nursing home. When you're on Medicaid in the nursing home, you get to keep $50 a month of your own income. $50, that's it. The rest goes to the facility. But I can draw on this to buy her a TV, a computer, a cell phone carrier, or the big one is, I can draw on this to upgrade her to a private room while she's on Medicaid. Who wants a roommate at age 85 in a space that's about 100 square feet? Not me. Not me. So this is a huge quality of life planning issue. But if she's lost capacity, what do I need to set this up? Power of attorney with the clause in there that gives me the ability as her agent to create a trust. Again, that's why that power of attorney is so important. All right, one last thought before I go. and I've got 3 minutes. There is a beast out there called a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. All right? Now, what we did over here is this was crisis planning, right? She tried to give some money in advance because she knew she had a diagnosis. I know you want your house in Indiana, Gerald, all right? But we can't throw Elsie under the bus here. Elise. We can't throw Elise under the bus here, I'm sorry. All right? But again, Elise still wants him to have the money. So what can we do? We can set up a trust, put the money in the box, give it to somebody who's independent of the family to hold and guard it. And if she makes it the next 5 years without having to apply for Medicaid, then at that point, we crack open the box and we give it to Merle and her husband. But if not, she doesn't make it 5 years, we're still cracking open the box, we're still giving it to Merle, but Merle is firing it back because we don't want her to be hooked for a Medicaid penalty. So that's the kind of planning you can do if you still want to gift, but again, you've got to have your eye on the Medicaid ball. Once you get that diagnosis, and everybody's here because they have an affiliation with Parkinson's disease, you don't bury your head in the sand if you're trying to leave assets to your children, you're worried you're not going to have enough. You've got to pull the trigger on this stuff 4, 5, 6 years in advance. Does that make sense? I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. Right? It's early. Hope you head to Starbucks before you came. I did. Okay. So if you make it to 5 years, then you're going to put your fingers in the eyes of Medicaid, and that will be fine. All right. The disadvantage of that is she gives up the control of her assets over that period. So there's a give and take there. All right. Okay. If you do this, if you have those documents in place, you better your chances of making across the bridge with dignity, which is ultimately the goal of our firm. All right? Don't bury your head in the sand. All right? You've been given a tough diagnosis. A family member's been given a tough diagnosis. It's not an easy road. But you do have options in planning if you go ahead and engage those options in planning. Whether it's with me, whether it's somebody else, go into it with eyes wide open. And I've got a feeling everybody here at this conference has a better chance of doing that, and that's why you're here. So I applaud you for being here. That's all I have for this morning. How about that? All right. Thank you.